In this video, we are going to be discussing the possibility, the rumors, the murmurs that Apple might acquire Disney now that Bob Iger is back. Iger's had a very cozy relationship with Apple. He's also the acquisition king. Is he going to make a move? Is there going to be a scenario where Apple actually swallows up the mouse house? We'll see. We're going to talk about it up next on OG 55.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
to all who come to this happy place,
welcome to Orange Grove 55.
Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG 55. We're talking about Apple. We're also going to dive into some other stuff as well in this show. It's going to be a fun conversation. I have my good friend, my collaborator, my producer.
And now, the man with many titles.
Nice.
Bringing you juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Mr. Vash Sky.
Yeah, there you go.
Welcome aboard, brother. Welcome aboard.
Well, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the intro. Not better than I deserve for sure, but it does get you hyped, right? It does get you hyped, and I do apologize for the audience for going in. What is it in WDW Pro mode, or well, maybe I should say
WDW Pro mode.
Right. I do apologize about that, but don't worry, we'll get back to the regularly scheduled programming very, very soon, I'm sure. But hey, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go do so on Twitter, where you'll find this avatar right there. You won't find a check mark, but it'll be this avatar for sure. At Vash Sky right there, type it in, should pop up as Christine Black Belts McCarthy. Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion. OG, you got that drop for me?
I absolutely do. Take it away, Walt.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
Biggest bargain of all, indeed. That is for sure. But I think Walt, when he was talking about bargains, I think he was talking about bargains, bundles, and the king of the bundles is right here at Orange Grove 55. Please, you got to go ahead and just subscribe for sure, where you can find shows like the one you're watching right here, Citrus Corner, and my own at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Absolutely. And this isn't Citrus Corner, but it is we do miss George very, very much. We do miss him very, very much. Shout out to George.
We do.
So let's go ahead and talk about the possibility of Apple acquiring Disney. This has been, look, I think it was The Wrap, actually, who actually kind of broke this story the other day.
Right.
And look, to be honest, this rumor has been floating around for at least a decade. I mean, every couple of years, this story sort of surfaces again and again. And now that Bob Iger came back and he's kind of like the CEO, the interim CEO, until he finds somebody to succeed him, well, the Apple rumor is rearing its head once again. So this actually is from, this is from The Wrap. It says here, The Wrap. And it says here, now that Disney CEO Bob Iger has regained the keys to the Magic Kingdom, less than 3 years after his chosen successor, Bob Chapek, took over, insiders suspect they know how the beloved executive will find a new way to get out on top during his final 2-year stint. Quote, he's going to sell the company, end quote. One Disney insider who has worked for Iger predicted, quote, this is the pinnacle deal for the ultimate deal maker. Dre, what are your thoughts on this, man? Like, what are your thoughts on this possibility that that Iger would actually kind of groom Disney to be sold off to Apple?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a rumor that has popped up every so often for, at least a decade, if not more. I mean, honestly, when that acquisition of Pixar was done, I believe, in 2006, 7, around there, right? For the 7-point-something billion dollar acquisition of Pixar, making Steve Jobs the largest private shareholder of Disney, which we will talk about, actually, about shareholders. I think this is very relevant to the conversation. There was definitely a relationship formed between the two men, being both Bob Iger and Steve Jobs, and apparently it was very, very close. And actually, Bob Iger himself outlines it in his book, Ride of a Lifetime, right? Which we're gonna need a sequel to that book at some point. That's gonna be very, very interesting. But in the first one, anyway, he goes into about how Steve Jobs, who's very, very close to him, and that he kind of lamented not actually having penned that deal for Apple to be officially acquired by Disney before he passed away. And that's kind of the most relevant thing. I think a realistic opportunity for Apple to acquire Disney, I think it passed away when Steve Jobs passed away, to be honest with you. And I don't think much has changed at this point. From that initial assessment that I had so many years ago. In fact, the prospects of Disney being owned by Apple, I think, have gotten worse from that moment. I want to go ahead and share something on the screen here.
Sure.
Our friend of the channel, Sir Braden of Mickey Views, actually was talking about this issue, and he had this wonderful chart pulled up here, and it's Apple's cash on hand, and you can see here it is around the $100 billion range as recently as December of 2019, but you can see with pretty much every single quarter, it looks like it has dropped significantly, and up until the point here in the most recent figure on this chart being June of 2022, I think their cash on hand is about about like $45-50 billion, somewhere in that range. I'm sure it's probably less by now. The company, all things considered, is probably worth anywhere between $180 to $200 billion. And that's I think, kind of conservative. It could be worth well more, especially with that debt load, right? Because you inherit those debts as well, and those former obligations. I don't really see Twitter. I'm sorry, not Twitter. You're seeing Twitter, but I don't really see Apple acquiring Disney right now, especially with what's going on, and I don't know if anybody's been keeping track of the Foxconn factories over there in China, but it's not looking very good. We're hearing mass layoffs across the board when it comes to these big tech companies, and let's add in one substantial inhibiting factor. It's gonna be regulators. We've heard from a number of politicians, both in the former Congress and the new Congress, that they're not so thrilled with this huge consolidation happening with these big corporations, especially in the media space specifically. And we've seen a lot of consolidation in the media space. What is it? WB, Warner Brothers Discovery comes to mind, and just top of mind. A lot of people are not quite thrilled with how that went down, and maybe that shouldn't have been a thing. Maybe that shouldn't have happened, and that has caused a lot of people in some pretty important positions regarding big acquisitions like this to kind of rethink that strategy. We're seeing even. I think the Wrap even includes this in their article. We're seeing people like Microsoft and how they made a bid for, I believe it's Blizzard, who just acquired Bethesda. This is one of the biggest gaming publishers out there, and they made a run at Activision Blizzard. And apparently the UK is contesting that acquisition. We just saw recently Random House and Simon & Schuster. They were they had to put the kibosh on their potential merger because a judge actually struck that down. You're talking about the biggest. Well, there you go, right there. NPR judge blocks Penguin, Random House, Simon and Schuster merger. Now Simon Schuster wasn't that? Is that part of Paramount? Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, Paramount's involved in this. Let me see here. They are involved in it. I'm not 100% sure how, but when you look them up, I think maybe Paramount owns them currently and was trying to sell them. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But they're in the equation.
Yeah, I mean, it just that lends credence to this whole thing where they're looking at media companies specifically and this kind of media consolidation that we've seen and kind of reevaluating that. I mean, it's Paramount's involved. I'm sure the antennas went up and that's not going to happen. So when I think about the prospect of Apple, acquiring Disney, I think that there was a time when that was possible. I just don't think we're there.
No, I agree with you. I don't think we're there. I mean, and look, there are pros to this deal and there are a lot of cons. I'll start with the cons. Just right off the gate, and this is coming from like a fanboy perspective. I would just be devastated to have Disney lose its independence, so to speak, and just autonomy, and just become basically a subsidiary of some other big corporation.
Right.
That would be heartbreaking, I think. I don't like that idea. I think that's a major con. Disney is one of the, or if not the only studio that has not been swallowed up by some other corporation. It's the only one that's done the swallowing, but has not been swallowed, so to speak. Yeah. So, from a Hollywood perspective, that would also be sad. The last studio to be swallowed up. There are pros though to it as well, though. I mean, look, Apple is an innovative tech company. What they could bring into the equation for the theme parks would be interesting. I mean, you can kind of. I can see definitely a marriage or a coupling between Walt Disney Imagineering and Apple's research and design division, and how they can kind of work together with new technology. I think the prospect of that would be very, very interesting. Apple has a lot of money, on hand. I think that might benefit the company in some way in terms of investments and things like that. I mean, they do have quite a bit of money. It's dwindling, but it's not. It's definitely still on the high end. Yeah. And also, I think on the pro side, I think look, Apple and Disney kind of share a common sort of mission statement. I mean, they're very similar companies. They're both premium products. They both charge an arm and a leg. Neither one of these companies is really known for discounting or anything like that. I mean, you go to the Apple store, everything's expensive. You go to Disney, everything's expensive. I mean, there's a lot of similarity here. They both have very, very iconic kind of symbolism within their company, like the Mickey Mouse ears, the Apple logo. Mm-hmm. The branding is very, very similar in terms of just the strength of it, the recognizability worldwide of it. They have a visionary founder and like Steve Jobs, and very similar to like that of Walt Disney. Look, there's a lot of similarities, but and there's a lot of pros to having this deal. But at the end of the day, though, if it's up to me, I am not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I want to see Disney be independent. I want to see them have their own autonomy. I don't want to see them being swallowed up by like some tech company. And I got to be completely honest with you. Apple hasn't really innovated since Steve Jobs passed away. Yeah. I mean, Tim Cook is kind of riding coattails. Let's be honest. Everything coming out of Apple since Jobs died has basically just been sort of reinventing the wheel over and over again. Okay, we're going to give you the iPhone this time. No. We're going to make it rose gold. Oh, now we'll make it bigger. Now we'll make it smaller. Now we'll make it this. Now we'll make it that. But everything is like this superficial, gimmicky kind of stuff. Yeah. Apple hasn't changed the world in a long, long time. They really, really haven't.
Even in the mobile space. I mean, we were just having this conversation the other day, and you remarked about how, let's say, the significant other in your family watches Korean programming. and you see some of the phones on there, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, whoa, what am I looking at? These are like phones from another world, and that's exactly correct. I mean, the Asian market has really been the kind of the forward thinking in terms of the mobile space for the mobile. What is it? The forward thinking factor in the mobile space for quite some time now, and Apple seems to be playing catch up, and they still haven't been able to really put out a compelling product for that large consumer base, being large portions of China, Japan, and South Korea. So that's kind of the even in the mobile space, it's like, man, where's the innovation? Where is the where's really the kind of the forward thinking that Steve Jobs really started? Honestly, it just hasn't really been there. Now, that's not to say that them taking on a Disney couldn't be good for them. It obviously could be. I mean, they provide hardware. I mean, just like you put it the other day. I mean, there's a Apple product of some type in every single home in North America, pretty much. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of true. And the prospect of actually having the media conglomerates of all media conglomerates underneath your portfolio or your umbrella, I mean, that is an attractive thing, because you could not only provide them the hardware, you can provide them the software or the content consumption coming right from you. So it is attractive. And from Disney's end, I will say this, and I've been talking about this for a little bit of for a little while, both publicly and privately. But when you see how diverse Disney's portfolio is, when you see how many different industries that they're actually in, I have felt this for a while, that they're pretty spread thin. And that is taking its toll on individual divisions underneath the Disney banner, right? Take, for example, the cruise line, right? We spent a couple of shows, really, propping up that cruise line, because it is such a good product. But I see the competition. I see Norwegian or Royal Caribbean, and I see some of the products that they offer as part, they're in the business of cruise lines and cruise lines only. And you see how ahead of the curve they are, being that they just do cruise line. That's all they do, and they focus all their attention and effort onto it. Whereas it's kind of a subsidiary with Disney, right? It's just this kind of one lone division amongst many. And we can see how the product has kind of been watered down because of that. And we can go through a range of different diverse industries that is part of the Disney banner right now, and kind of see that same effect. The parks being, I think, one of them. Them being acquired by Apple, obviously there would be some streamlining. There would be some cutting, and some kind of maybe some more bring Disney into a much more manageable size and scope and organizational structure and so forth. And that could lead to the betterment of a lot of those products that we know and love, but haven't gotten necessarily the attention, because everybody is so spread thin. Right. So I think that right there, I would be I would be optimistic in that sense, because of that prospect, right? Also, too, you brought it up many times, how the technical side, like the technological side of the parks, could be rapidly increased, right? There could be some great cross-pollination or some synergy there with Apple's kind of product line and their R&D, their technological user base and so forth, and how that is uniquely integrated into the parks in a way that no other theme park company could ever dream of doing. It'd be kind of fascinating to see that, but I think you're right. I mean, I do appreciate Disney's autonomy. I think Captain America says that the safest hands are still our own. I happen to agree with that sentiment in a range of different pursuits in life, and I think Disney, being a company that's autonomous, I think it has value.
No, 100%, 100%. Now, a YouTuber that I watch pretty much every day. I actually I'm a huge fan of this channel, Den of Nerds. And he tweeted, his name is Josh. He tweeted out this. Now, keep in mind, Den of Nerds isn't a theme park guy. He's not. He does a lot of Marvel, MCU, Star Wars, nerd culture kind of content. So he's not in the theme park space at all. But what he's saying here, and I thought this was an interesting tweet by Josh. He said, all the ways Disney makes money are in danger of shrinking as technologies and consumers change.
Yeah.
All the ways Apple makes money have massive growth potential as technology and consumers change. That was an interesting tweet. What do you think about that, Dre?
Oh, I think he's really onto something here. To be very honest, and this is why this is the thing that both Bob Chapek and Bob Iger were the one thing that they two could probably agree on. Now, they couldn't agree on necessarily getting to that point, but they agree on this point, which is it's better to be ahead of the curve than behind it.
Right?
You've heard Iger talk about that. You've even heard Chapek talk about that. Now, again, different philosophies and how to get there, but you have to constantly innovate. You have to really examine that marketplace and not just how the landscape exists today, but how that landscape might change in the future. And that's one of the reasons why Disney Plus was such a fundamental thing, part of that strategy when it was introduced in November of 2019. I mean,
yeah,
it was to get ahead of the curves in the changing consumer base and technological base in which people consume this content on. I think there will be a time when theatrical just, is not necessarily a thing, I mean, we've seen that space change considerably in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Completely.
But I think it will continue to change in profound, fundamental ways. Maybe not even be a thing eventually. I think that is a real prospect. So yeah, I think Den of Nerds is exactly correct. It's like Apple provides a technological platform and a consumer base that has really adapted to it and has really taken it on in a way that Disney could never really facilitate on their own.
Right.
I think is the most important thing. And when you think about content delivery, you have to think about the hardware that you're putting it on.
Right. No, you do. You absolutely do. And I read this tweet and I'm like, wow. And this is why I liked his content. He really does make me think. I like what he brings forth, because he always has like these really interesting kind of perspectives,
Yeah, absolutely.
And he makes a great point here. He makes a great point. So we'll see how it all pans out. I mean, look, I think the theme parks are right now currently the strongest thing in Disney's portfolio, and I think they will continue to do so. Yeah. I think people are looking for ways to kind of unplug a little bit and kind of get like physical, like get into it like a physical thing and be away from a screen. Now, ironically, the parks are incorporating your phone more and more, okay. But
I'm not thrilled about that.
Yeah, but for the most part, the theme parks are an escape to that. A lot of kids nowadays, they spend most of their days, in front of a screen. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's kind of nice to take the family out and do something out in the open, outside, away from the screen. So I think that will continue to thrive. I think there's definitely a thirst for that, and we're seeing that right now. I think that's going to continue. But in terms of that shrinking market, though, that Josh is talking about, he's right. And you hit the nail on the head with the theaters and the streaming. That whole thing is changing dramatically.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, though, I mean, and this is, we can kind of pivot into a different conversation here.
Yeah.
There's a little pivot there.
Sure.
This is part of the reason why Chapek was so bullish on taking every single dime the company even generated, and not just putting it towards the debt load, but also putting it towards Disney Plus.
Right.
Disney Plus, I think, is definitely part of the equation when it comes to the future of entertainment content and entertainment content distribution and so forth. Right. But like I said, he put every single dollar into it, and apparently that was one of the big sticking points that Iger actually had with Chapek, which was kind of surprising to learn. Because I mean, how many times have we said this on this show, right? We've said it multiple times that, wow, taking all this CapEx and just funneling towards Disney Plus to what end, especially when your strategy regarding that platform is not necessarily as sound as it could be. I mean, from what I understand, Zaslav kind of laughs at Disney's current approach to its content delivery vehicle in the form of Disney Plus. Right, because you take these $250 million films, right, and after 30 days or 45 days of release, you just stick it right on the platform on this kind of all-you-can-eat buffet style for $8 a month, and it doesn't make any sense when you can actually stretch that window out there. And not only have a longer theatrical run, but you could sell that film multiple times in multiple different ways, whether they be other DTC platforms, other linear platforms, and so forth, right? Physical media and all of that. You just sticking it, from theatrical to streaming, doesn't really make sense. And I think that's one thing that Iger is going to be looking at, because right now it's not just subscribers. It's about profitability. And I think Chapek couldn't really get past. It's like, oh, we got to build the subscriber base, We got to be, one of the 2 or 3 left of at the end of the race here. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You have to be profitable as well. And you can't just have every single division take the hit just so that you can, fund this kind of money pit, so to speak.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, I think they're like with the whole theatrical window thing. I think it's gonna have to be kind of like a case by case kind of thing, because, like, for example, like superhero movies, like comic book films are very front loaded, because and like even like a movie, even like franchises like Star Wars, right? They're very front loaded because it's connected to a bigger world.
Yeah.
And so fans go on, and this has been a thing for Star Wars for like decades, where fans want to be the first in the theater to watch that movie because like it's, spoiler culture, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to miss out on like what's happening in this and then be spoiled. And Marvel and Star Wars are very much part of that equation. So those are very front loaded things. Like, so a Marvel movie might not necessarily have to have a long theatrical window because the bulk of the people are going to see that the first few weekends to avoid spoilers, where other franchises might need a little bit longer to leg out. Maybe like an Avatar might need a little longer of a window to leg out. But like a Marvel movie where it's like people go like opening weekend or second weekend and then it falls off, maybe those you don't necessarily need that longer. So I think they're just going to have that flexibility. You can't, I think the days of like a one size fits all, I don't think that works anymore.
I mean, you can make the argument for sure, especially for films of various different genres. And yes, you are correct that these films traditionally are front loaded, but 30 days, 45 days. I mean, shouldn't it at least be 3 months? I mean, that's kind of my thing regarding this. It's just a little bit too soon, no matter how you slice it. You need some legs, right? And you really need that compulsion to kind of see it in theaters in order to avoid spoilers. If people know that they can just wait for a bit, especially, I mean, Marvel movies, okay, maybe you do have to see that one in theaters for spoiler culture, and maybe Star Wars is included in that. But when people know that they can just wait for 30 to 45 days and it'll be on the streaming platform that they pay $8 a month for, I don't think that's really necessarily a good strategy. And one of the reasons why they do that is because they want to avoid churn. It's kind of the other thing that's the, to the detriment of Disney Plus, right? You're trying to not just, get subscribers, but maintain those subscribers. And sometimes you have to do some things that are a little bit uncomfortable in which to do that. And it's I don't know, the strategy seems bungled to me, especially when you look at the profit generation for some of these films that they had even just a couple of years ago. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed. And it looks like that might be Iger's priorities when it comes to the strategy for Disney in the future. It's interesting. We saw that one tweet, I think, together regarding Strange World.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this film, right?
Right.
It's interesting. This is a film that Iger himself approved, finally coming out here, and what the initial box office? It looks like an opening weekend of like what, $25 million based on the 800,000 or so in Tuesday night previews for this thing. I mean, this is not good. This is a $200 million animated film, and it looks like it's going to lose a lot of money. To put it into perspective, folks, Tuesday night preview money, it apparently is about like half of what Encanto got, and that Encanto didn't have the best theatrical run.
Didn't do well. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. This movie, and this is the thing. I mean, some people might blame it on like socio-political stuff in the film, and that might be a part of it. I think internationally, I think out here though, stateside, I think I'm going to keep it real simple. The movie doesn't look good.
No,
I think that's what it boils down to. I really do. I don't think people are avoiding it necessarily because of the LGBTQT thing. Or here in the States, I think it does not look good. I watched a trailer and I'm like, It reminds me of those early 2000s Disney movies, right? Like the Atlantis, the Brother Bear. This movie sits comfortably in that tier. And those movies aren't necessarily bad movies, but they're certainly not Beauty and the Beast. They're certainly not The Lion King or Aladdin or The Little Mermaid. They're very much like C-tier Disney animation. And Strange World is very much of that kind of tier. And I just think a lot of families just are not interested. And it's going to have a real tough time. Encanto was lucky because Encanto had really, really great music. Catchy music. So when people finally got around to watching it on Disney Plus, it was like, oh wow, okay. And the music is what really spearheaded its success going forward. Strange World doesn't have music. It's not going to do that. Strange World is going to do what Lightyear did. It's going to flop in theaters and it's going to whimper onto Disney Plus.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall regarding that film. I think Kareem Daniel may be one of those people that saw the writing on the wall, going like, I don't think this is going to fly. Like this is probably going to tank. So why throw good money after bad in terms of advertising dollars to give it a chance when you can just hold back, consolidate your losses, and maybe not support a film in the way that maybe you would have if it was a better film, like from what I understand, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, or Avatar. It just makes sense to invest your dollars into those films.
Yeah, and Disney, and I get a lot of heat for this kind of whenever I say this, but I'm going to stand by it, and I've been saying this for years. Look back at my old content from even 2017. I've been saying this forever. But Disney is really at its best when Disney animation is really at its best when it does the Disney animation thing, right? Yeah. When it does that storybook, fairy tale whimsy that the studio is known for.
Yes. And
I'm not saying that they should completely be closed-minded and from trying new things. It's fine to kind of dabble and experiment, but I think at the core, though, this studio needs to kind of have an overall mission statement, an overall kind of tone and energy, right?
Especially one that separates it from Pixar, for sure.
Right, I was just going to say that. Exactly. Why have two animation studios if they're going to make very similar content? You might as well have one that does one kind of movie and one that does the other, and I think that they've kind of mixed in a little too much together, and I think so. This is the thing that they've gotten away from what Disney animation is, what people want to see from the studio. And they did it again, back in the day in the early 2000s, they did that. Those C-tier movies that I'm talking about, Atlantis and all that stuff, was a departure of the storybook fairy tale. And the product ended up suffering, and the box office ended up suffering because of that. Every time we've seen a resurgence in Disney animation, it's been a return to form, whether it be The Little Mermaid, whether it be back in the day Cinderella, whether it be even this most recent kind of Renaissance resurgent with Tangled, and Frozen. I mean, it always gets a resurgence when it goes back to the basics.
Right.
It might be
And
time for that again, I think.
yeah, we talk about, Eisner and Iger, probably Chapek as well, they're obsessed with franchises, right? Franchises. I don't think any of them quite understood, though, that Disney Animation had its own franchise, and it was fairy tale films.
Right.
That's their niche. Nobody else does fairy tale films, whether it be in-house with Pixar or with Illumination out of house, right? DreamWorks. Nobody does fairy tale films quite like Disney does. And fairy tale films, they sell. they absolutely do. I mean, look at Frozen. I mean, it's just wild.
Crazy.
When the pieces come into play, I mean, it is wild. It is really it's incredible to actually see everything come together when you have a good fairy tale film actually do very, very well. You got, like you said, OG, you got to get back to that franchise
Right.
of Disney Animation producing those fairy tale films, because nobody else can quite do it like Disney. And people, I mean, honestly, that's what they expect from Disney Animation more than anything. I'm not saying that you can't, branch out in some form, but when it comes to Walt Disney Studios, when it comes to those animated productions, and especially ones that are gonna mandate anywhere between 150 to $200 million budgets, you really have to do something that appeals to not only your base but to a wide demographic, and that I think is done most eloquently with fairy tale films.
Right. And like you said, like, don't be afraid to branch out, but you can branch out and still be within the realm of that kind of storybook kind of vibe. Like, a perfect example of that would be The Lion King. The Lion King isn't a fairy tale, but it's still very much in the same. It kind of still speaks to that same sort of thing that the fairy tales do.
Yeah, it's like a folk tale that is kind of escapist, right? That has memorable characters. Obviously, songs are involved. Yeah, it does fit that kind of formula that makes that kind of a distinct franchise that Walt Disney Studios Animation had.
Right, exactly. So they got to get back to that. And one thing that really bugs me too, and whenever they start to modernize this stuff, like, for example, like, oh well, the princesses. It was like a trope, right? They would fall in love at first sight. Oh, they love at first sight, right? So now we have to get rid of that because, like we got to make it more modern, and like the princess doesn't need a man or doesn't need romance. And it's like the issue I have with that is that when I'm watching a fairy tale, I'm watching a fairy tale because it's not normal everyday life.
Right.
These princesses fall in love with these princes like almost immediately, and that's okay because it's a fairy tale. That's the point. That's the point. That it's not real life. I don't want to see a princess like dating and like going through drama and like going through the real world stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see something extraordinary, something different, unique, and very fanciful. And that's why I watch these things. And to kind of like this kind of thing now with this kind of like mindset where like, oh, we have to make it more true to real life. Well, that's not why I watch a fairy tale. I don't want to I don't watch Cinderella because I want to see what Cinderella is going to go through dating and courting a bunch of guys and the relationships that she has. I don't have no desire for that. I want to see the fantasy. And that's why you go and see a fairy tale is for that, So
you don't want to see Cinderella, boot up the Tinder app and her get a job and trying to find somebody, trying to find love. Wait, didn't we just get that with She-Hulk? I don't know. Look,
yeah, exactly.
Listen, you're right, though. I mean, look, it is a fairy tale. It is a fantasy. Like, embrace the fantastical element of it.
Right.
Look, listen, Frozen is never going to be realistic, right? And some of the story beats don't necessarily have to be either. And it's so funny because they talk about tropes, dead tropes, whatever, what is it? These female characters, oh, they don't need no man, they don't need this, they don't need that. And so we've replaced those tried and true tropes that get, just cross appeal when it comes to different countries and so forth, right? The different cultures, these stories and featuring these elements that just appeal to just about anybody. We've replaced those with tropes like strong independent female. How many times, OG, for the last probably 8 years or something, right? How many times have we heard the strong independent female trope? We hear it over and over and over. How many cookie cutter female characters have we seen bore out of this kind of thinking? It's boring. It's not interesting. We've seen it done to death, and we're still in that kind of mode. And it really is kind of unfortunate because these characters end up being instead of these kind of complex characters that have these kind of positives and negatives, right? And they kind of overcome their negatives and so forth, all that. These kind of very complex, interesting characters that are dynamic, that grow and so forth. We now get these just cookie cutter characters that have their own new tropes built into them that are far less interesting than the old ones. Right.
No, exactly. You're trading one trope for the other. And it's like, in the name of being like, progressive or whatever, it's like, well, you're not really doing anything. You're just like you said, you're just changing one trope out for the other. And it's just now we're stuck in this same rut. It's just, so it's frustrating. It really is.
And there's limited international appeal when you do that, right? Because, just because a North American audience maybe feels a certain way about a certain cultural issue or whatever, doesn't mean that translates overseas very well at all. And I think they got to really do something about that. We're already seeing changes, though, in terms of the studio space. Real fast, right before we head offline here, Avatar, I guess, is getting a run in China, which is very interesting how the China guy in the form of Bob Iger, I should say. Bob Iger. I gotta get out of Bob Chapek mode, get into Bob Iger mode. The China guy in the form of Bob Iger, who was looking to be possibly an ambassador for the Biden administration as it relates to China, right? He's back in the office, and what is the first thing he does? Well, he pens a deal to have Avatar distributed in China, which, from what we understand, is going to need it. Like that is a very, very expensive film.
Very expensive. It's definitely an uphill battle. I've just learned through the years never to bet against James Cameron. If this was anybody else, I mean, I would say Avatar 2 is dead in the water. It's not going to make us money back. For James, I don't know what kind of deal James Cameron made with the universe. The dude manages to pull through every single time, despite all the odds. Even that, we talked about on the phone the other day, even the re-release of Avatar, 15 years later, just recently, like a few months ago, I think over the summer, made like $30 million opening weekend. I'm like, I think it made maybe even more than Strange World will make this weekend.
I was just about to say that. I think it will make more than Strange World did in its opening weekend. That's wild. Right?
And that was a re-release of a 2009 movie. I mean, James Cameron, whatever, I don't know what's going on with that guy, but he always comes through. So I'd be surprised if this movie really, really just tanked. We'll see what happens. I mean, look, the opening weekend numbers are not super strong.
No,
they're not. I mean,
for 135 million, I think it's opening weekend, which Black Panther Wakanda Forever just opened to 180 million. So that's not good.
Right. And this is a much more expensive movie.
Far more.
Now, the first Avatar only opened at 70 million. Now, inflation is a thing since then.
Yeah.
But Avatar, the first movie, legged out like unbelievable. Like it didn't have any drop off from weekend to weekend. It was like 1%. It was crazy. Is this one going to do that? I don't know.
It was like Maverick on steroids. I mean, it really was. It was wild. It was
wild.
It was incredible. And they want to recapture that success. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. I understand that. But maybe you don't do it in 2022. Maybe you do it in 2012.
Yeah.
I don't know. This window may have passed. Gamble. Hopefully it hasn't. Hopefully there's new technology that people are bedazzled by and want to see. And maybe the story's even much far better and far more improved than the original Avatar in 2009. Yeah. And maybe people feel compelled to not only get into the theater, but get into it again with this film and also with subsequent releases down the line. We will see.
We will see. It would be good, obviously, for Disney if that were the case. It would also be good for, and I'm not even a theater guy, but a lot of people love the theater. This would be great for the theaters. If they can really, I don't know if this is going to get like a 3D release or what have you, but if this movie really catches fire, well, you know, those 3D tickets are a lot more expensive. This is good for the theater industry as well. So I think there would be a lot of benefit to this movie doing very well. I'm rooting for it. I'm not the biggest Avatar fan. Our buddy Jay, Drunk 3PO, loves Avatar.
Oh,
He's
really?
a huge Avatar. Yeah, he loves Avatar.
Now,
loves Avatar.
Is he an Avatar fan because of Pandora, or is he an Avatar fan just because, like, it's...
That's interesting. I believe in Jay. If you're watching this, comment in the comments down below, but I believe he's just an overall Avatar guy. I think he likes the franchise. Wow. So very interesting.
My brother loves Avatar, which is surprising because that's the only person I've met other than Jay now. Right. So this is very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea. But hey, we'll see how it all pans out. But I want to thank you, brother, for coming on today. If you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Very quickly, yes, you can go ahead and find me at VashGuy on Twitter. It's right there underneath the avatar, which you'll also see, by the way, if you go ahead and look it up on Twitter right now. You'll see this avatar. You'll see the name. That's me. So please go ahead and hit the follow button right there. Would most appreciate it. And if you want to go ahead and see more of me, well, you can go ahead and do so right here at Orange Grove 55, where you can find my show, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And as Walt would say, the biggest bargain of all. Well, I mean, come on, this is Disney in 2022. But OG, do you have the drop there for?
Absolutely.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all. But in 2022, we say the bundle, right? The bundle with Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN. Well, we have our own bundle when it comes to content. We have the show Orange Grove 55, Freshly Squeezed, and Citrus Corner, Orange Nerd, among others. So hit that subscribe button right there, guys. Honestly, it's going to be very, very interesting in the coming days for sure when it comes to content. We will have much to talk about. As Scott Goosen just reported today, gonna have a roundtable discussion with Bob Iger and Disney employees where all questions will be answered. So don't miss out on that for sure.
100%. Thank you, Dre, for coming on. And thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on what we talked about today. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.